here. You good? It's 7 p.m. on Monday, November 18th, 2024, and I will call this regular City Council meeting to order. I do want to thank everyone who's joining us this evening in person and online, and if Councilmember Strader would lead us in the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Councilmember Cedar is absent this evening. If I could get a motion to excuse.
Move to excuse.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Council Hall to excuse Councilmember Cedar this evening. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 6-0. And then just to note for the record for staff, we have Director Madden, Interim Director, Finance Director Robeck, Assistant Chief Champagne, and City Clerk Tricia Summers. Moving on to citizen participation, the purpose of the public comment period at this meeting is for those wishing to address the council on any matter. It's not intended for debate and discussion with the public. And please state your name and city for the record, and we kindly remind you to limit your comment to 3 minutes. Before we start with those in the audience, I do want to note that we had written comment provided by a Milton resident, Anthony, regarding corrective notice, and that was forwarded to council this afternoon. So first on our list is Ron, is it Collier? Collier.
Yeah, Ron Collier, Milton. Thank you for taking the time to hear me speak on this issue. I'm here to provide information about the harassment I've been receiving from my neighbor at 909 15th Avenue. The situation began in the summer of 2023 when I received a certified letter from my neighbor, Anthony Moore. In the letter, he accused me of harassment because I had called the Milton Police about his vehicle. It had been parked in the same spot in the right-of-way next to our yard for months straight without moving. He had spoken with him personally. I had spoken with him personally prior to calling, and he was unwilling to move his vehicle, even to just let me mow that area. The police also asked him if he could move his vehicle to a different spot, and I believe he told them I don't feel like it. For a period of time after that, the police would mark next to his tires, and he would swap vehicles every 3 days to comply with the city code, sometimes in the middle of the night with his wife's assistance, always being sure to put the vehicle in exactly the same spot. Things escalated when I acquired a tractor and a truck. Hoping to park them in my backyard, I installed an additional gate, leveled the ground, and wanted to lay a small amount of gravel to park on. My neighbor's truck had once again been parked directly in front of the area that I was installing the gate for more than 2 months. I'd grown tired of the every 3-day game he was playing and had stopped alerting the police. I requested again at that he move his truck forward a few feet so that I would not damage it while I was working on the fence. He said, "I'm not moving that truck." In order to have that gravel delivered, we had to involve the police again. My neighbor then decided to block my other gate instead. Most recently, I wanted to sell a travel trailer that had been parking in my backyard. In order to do so, I needed to have access to the gate that he was blocking. This time, he had been parked in the exact same place. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Without moving it for 8 months continuously. When the police tagged the vehicle to be towed, our neighbor actually had to have it towed himself because it was not capable of running. There have been so many more instances exactly like this that I could take up the entire evening going over the details, but that would just be another waste of time, and this situation has wasted everyone's time more than enough. However, I'm unsure how to proceed from here. I've tried speaking with him about this, and for some reason this seems to be something that he's unwilling to compromise on. I'm only requesting that he move his vehicle a few feet forward and park between the gates when possible. I do not believe this is an unreasonable request, especially if he's intending to use the right-of-way as his personal storage. We have never had a problem with him using the right-of-way for occasional or guest parking, and I've said that to him many times. I honestly do not know his motivation for this harassment. I believe he has contacted the city regarding other issues he has with me as well. His behavior seems to be intentional and malicious. I only ever been friendly and polite in my interactions with him. I've been told by this city that this is mainly concerns parking. It is not a form of harassment, and that the city of Milton can address. I just want to go on record to say that I strongly disagree with that policy. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ron. Next, we have Justin Murray.
Hi there, Justin Murray, Milton, Washington. Really quick, I was driving around today on 19th Avenue, right in front of Hill Tower Park. The school zone traffic light that usually flashes, letting you know that it's school zone time and 20 miles an hour. Today, it was just solid on. All the other ones were flashing, but today this one was just a hard light. So just wanted to pass that along. All the other ones that I saw while driving around were flashing, but the one right in front of Hill Tower Park on 19th was just a solid light on. Just passing it along. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Next, we have Jackie Strader.
Jackie Strader, Milton, Washington. So I'm talking about the comp plan tonight. I was coasting along, reading the comp plan docs, thinking everything's going great. No surprises. And then I saw the November 12th study session comp plan draft changing the minimum lot width for all the residential single-family lots in Milton from 75 feet to 60 feet, and that it was presented as a minor change. On my street alone, I understand there's a document that's been created that shows, that was presented to the Planning Commission, that shows on my street that there aren't that many lots that currently qualify, but buildings can be torn down, garages can be moved, things change, people sell. On my street alone, there's 23 building lots. The map has streets on, or lots presented on other streets, and I'm only talking about my street. 23 building lots. With the state mandates currently in place, there could be 46 additional dwelling units for a total of 69. That's right now, no changes. If that doesn't go through, if the lot's width stays at 75 feet. With the lot reduction, the number could be as high as 138 dwelling units on one block, assuming a complete build out. That's not a minor change. And I think it's important to look at the full impact and find ways to mitigate them and discuss them with the community. I spoke with Jeff Arango today with Framework, and he told me the decision for the change was made months ago. And Framework created a map for the city showing all the lot widths. Where's that map? This isn't a decision that should be introduced 36 months into a project, just weeks before approval with no community notification. And it is in opposition to the public comments that I've read in the various documents. On the comp plan page, on the city website, you won't find the comp plan or instructions on how to find the comp plan. The last project update on that page was on May 23. To find the comp plan documents, you have to know to go to the online permit portal, scroll down, click on search, then enter the letters PLN in the search box, then search, and you'll get a list of documents. Then you have to scroll through those documents, clicking on the various numbers because they're numbered, not named, and having various documents downloaded until you find the ones you want to read. It's not an easy system. But if you read the documents, you'll find lots of citizen input from the survey and the visioning workshop regarding development, the main theme, and I was at the visioning workshop and I responded to the surveys. I've participated on the steps. One citizen said, less development. Milton is quickly losing the small town vibe that I liked. Why can't it be enough to first see how the city develops in response to the changes that the state has mandated us to make? And if that goes well, and the citizens desire or the state mandates more development, then there can be discussions regarding creative ways to create additional infill. This does not have to be a change that's made now. This is being done for an arbitrary reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jacqueline Whalen.
May I approach the dais and give the clerk some supporting material? So presuming, and I'm not expecting that you all would be looking at this and reading it right now, but it's to back up the comments about to be made. I too am at the podium to talk about the proposed lot width reduction for what's currently called the single-family zone, the area on your zoning map that is the yellow color. I can think of, well, I'll start out by saying the planning, and by the way, I'm speaking as an individual citizen. I am not representing the values or opinions of the Planning Commission. The first time it's in print is in council packet last week. That's the first time citizens got to see it in print. I can think of 3 quick reasons, substantial reasons, why you really need to put the brakes on the idea of reducing minimum lot width. First, it's not wanted by the citizenry. As stated earlier, you research documents, nobody wanted this, and discuss density from a perspective of concentrate it along Meridian and really think about infill. Second, it's not mandated by state law. There are no changes in state law that says you have to reduce from 75 to 60-foot width. Third, it's not needed to meet our growth targets imposed by the Growth Management Act and state regulatory and more jurisdictions that have purview over our comprehensive plan. So if it's not wanted, it's not mandated, and it's not needed, there's no need to include it in what will soon be at your desk, not only a comprehensive plan, but zoning code changes to support that plan. I would also say there's a 4th reason to not do it. Thinking about our future. Thinking about the strategic concept of this could be on the horizon for us, changing minimum lot widths. Let's start thinking now. Let's figure out how to make it agreeable and amenable to people in the neighborhood. Before you even start getting into discussions, and I'll just refer to those papers I just gave you, they're a great example of interpretation. From my perspective, there's 7 lots in the sample area that can right away short plat with a 60-foot minimum lot width. There's a few more that it wouldn't take much creativity or issue. It's a single garage, it's a double carport. It's not we got to demolish the single-family home on the site in order to create it. So it's all about how you look at things. It's all about your sample area. And I'll give you an example of how you may have an assumption that may or may not be in alignment with our code. How do we measure lot width in Milton? Figure it out in your head? Milton doesn't measure it by street frontage. Milton measures it by the middle of the lot. So this is something that needs thoughtful consideration, and I dearly hope that you will remove that change from an upcoming zoning packet. Thank you.
Thank you, and that concludes citizen participation. Moving on to additions and deletions. Council, I just want to note that in front of you, you'll find a revised agenda. Nothing significant. It was a small typo under public hearing. said final budget. It's obviously not the final budget, it's preliminary. And then I believe it also said it on 7A, so we just removed that word as well. So just a small revision. Are there any other additions or deletions to tonight's agenda? All right. Moving on to the consent agenda, which is found on page 3 of your packet. A motion to pass. Councilmember Preddy?
I move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Preddy and seconded by Councilmember Whalen to pass the consent agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 6-0. Moving on to the next item this evening, it is a public hearing for the 2025 preliminary budget. I'm going to turn the floor over to our interim director, Robeck, for a presentation, and then following that presentation, I'll open up the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The 2025 preliminary budget document was provided to the City Council and available to the public on October 14th, and discussion was held at the study sessions on October 14th and November 12th. The public hearing is scheduled to take public testimony regarding the 2025 preliminary budget. This is an opportunity for citizens to express their suggestions and opinions. A second public hearing is scheduled for December 2nd, and adoption of the 2025 budget may follow that public hearing. The budget must be adopted prior to December 31st, 2024.
I will now open up the public hearing at 7:16 p.m. to take public comment on the 2025 preliminary budget. As a reminder, just remember to state your name and city for the record and limit your comment to 3 minutes. We have Jacqueline Whalen signed up.
Thank you, and my apologies. Jacqueline Whalen, Milton, Washington, and that applies for the prior comment. I haven't moved in between the two. So on the comprehensive, not the comprehensive plan, but on the budget, just asking that extra funds be allocated to the planning department for long-range planning. Based on my earlier comment, the day will come when we're going to have to take more intensive measures to accommodate future growth. And I would hope that you've really got a budget, an amount of money in there to take on this really big task, to think about how areas of Milton could grow with overlay districts, with special rules for an area. It could be stuff as simple as a duplex has to look like a single-family home. It doesn't have to be crazy complicated. There could be areas where you say the only way you could short plat in this area is you must measure by street frontage. Panhandles aren't allowed. I'm talking about general kind of things like that. Also, utilities. I'm asking the council take an extra look as well at the utilities, capital facilities plan, or capital plan projects. Are we really working towards a future where so much is demanding of electricity and that we've got the network to supply it and make it happen? And I really hope more money will be set aside for sidewalks. It is one of the most frequent comments you hear from citizens. We want a walkable city. We want sidewalks. Thank you.
Having received all comments, I will now close the public hearing at 7:18 p.m. Council, moving on to our first regular agenda item this evening. It is on page 25 of your packet. It's the first read of ordinance 2103-24 for the 2025 budget. I will turn the floor back over to Interim Director Robeck.
Thank you again. I don't have a whole lot to add other than what we just presented for the public hearing and what was presented at last week's council meeting. Other than to again note that the major changes are noted in the mayor's budget message, and just to take any comments, questions, suggestions tonight.
Any questions, comments, concerns, feedback for Interim Director Robeck? Councilmember Peretti.
Thank you for bringing this forward again. I'd like to have us turn to page 12 on actually the packet. It's page 45, 163 of the budget. And on page 12 of our packet, where I actually have the budget, it's page 45 of 63 of the packet. If you look at the Criminal Justice Fund, I'm curious of why we are ending with a projected fund balance of only 44,000 when starting with 463. And maybe you can talk a little bit about what, that's a little bit peculiar to what we've done in the past in that realm.
That's a good question. The biggest reason for drawing down that is increased expenditures in the criminal justice fund. We did predict in a previous year that we would be drawing it down like that, but the actuals came out better than the budget. I do anticipate that most likely by the end of 2025, the ending balance will be higher than the 44 projected here, because this does include the wages and benefits at the very highest level. So we can almost always expect that there will be, or not expect, but I anticipate that there will be, we'll do better than budget, especially in the salaries and benefits lines. I know that that's not really answering your question. I guess previously we did have a better beginning fund balance that we've been drawing down on. And even though expenditures increased, we didn't increase the transfer in from the general fund by a necessarily proportional amount to fully cover those increased expenditures. So that's why you're seeing that. And the Criminal Justice Fund is part of the general fund now. So we haven't been as concerned with having a large ending balance, knowing that it's dependent on transfers in from the general fund and reported as part of the general fund.
Now, your expenditure side of the budget, does that take an effect when you're budgeting out for the expenditure side for personnel, a full staffed police department?
That is a fully staffed police department, assuming or budgeting for everyone being at the top of the wage scale and benefits that would be the employee, spouse, and at least 2 children, so full benefits.
Okay.
And there were other increases as well in jail services, and I think it was 911. No, animal control and jail services had some fairly large increases.
Okay. Can I ask another? Keep going.
Of course, yeah.
And then maybe this might be a question to maybe other members of council, but our rainy day fund, is that in statute is that in ordinance for our city, or is that a?
Michelle's shaking her head yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the rainy day fund is an ordinance. So if you turn to, find that page where I need to find it here. On the allegation for the rainy day fund, my understanding is that we want a 10% balance, if it is in statute. We want a 10% balance of general fund expenditures. And if we fall under that, then it needs to be at least a 1% increase each year until we get to that 10% rainy day fund balance of the general fund expenditures.
Yes.
What I'm seeing this year is we're actually going down 0.5% from last year.
And you read that verbatim almost. That is correct. The transfer in that we have gone down primarily because general fund expenditures went up, and I would say that's mostly because of the photo enforcement expenditures and the judicial costs related to that. So the general fund expenditures went up, so that necessary balance in the rainy day fund increased. We have budgeted to transfer, instead of that 1% that we've set in code that we're going to transfer if we fall below, we have budgeted to transfer 10% instead of the 1% in an effort to move towards getting to that required balance.
Okay, so maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I thought it is that we had to gain a 1% in the fund balance percentage of general fund, how it's written. Instead of, we're not transferring 20% or 10%, but if we're currently at 8 point, and I think we're at 8.5% right now, we should at least gain to a 9.5% fund balance ratio this year.
I see what you're saying. It was my understanding that how it reads, that the transfer in needs to, let me see, the balance should be increased by at least, it was my understanding that the transfer in needed to be at least or increase by at least 1% until you reach that 10% balance. But it does say if the balance in the rainy day fund falls below the 10% target, the balance should be increased by at least 1% per year.
Right.
Well, I think that means the balance of the rainy day fund should
Or
be
the rainy,
increased.
yeah, the rainy day should increase by 1%.
Yeah,
Until it reaches, it's the 1% of the 10%. The 10% is the goal. So if you're at 8%, this year's next budget should be at 9%.
I'm following you. I read that differently. I interpreted that to mean that the transfer in should increase by at least 1% each year. I can look at the actual code I've looked at it before, and I thought we reflected that in the description here, but I'll look at it again, and we can adjust that transfer to make sure that if that's the case, that the balance as a percentage is increasing by 1% instead of the transfer in increasing by 1%.
Okay, appreciate that.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Councilmember White?
Yeah, I started, sorry. I started looking at this, starting with the general fund summary, noticing that the beginning fund balance, and then looking at the ending fund balance and noticing that it's almost $1 million that is, that it's going down almost $1,900,000, essentially. And so then I started looking as to where that money was going. And it appears that something happening this year that hasn't happened in the past is two fairly large transfers out, one going to the future, to the asset replacement fund, and the other going to the criminal justice fund. First, let me ask about the asset replacement fund, which here, page 71. Second one down, it says property acquisition, $500,000, $500,000 that's being transferred into that fund. And when you look on the back on page 72, there's already enough money in that fund to pay for everything that's budgeted. So I'm just wondering, why does it need to have an ending fund balance of over $500,000? Page 72.
I can answer that.
Yeah, so why is that money being transferred?
It came out of comments from the budget retreat. It's a transfer to begin accumulating funds to acquire property for parks, open space, and city facilities if opportunities arise. So if a piece of property comes up for sale, we have some money set aside to buy that as a city if we're interested. And that was, I think several council members mentioned that they supported the idea of setting money aside for purchase of those parcels if and when they become available.
Okay, it didn't seem to make logical sense that an asset replacement fund would be something that would acquire real property. So I guess that's where my confusion lied there.
It, like I said, it came up in the budget retreat. It seemed like the best fund to put it in. We could have set up a separate fund, a brand new fund, but the description of this fund does say that its amounts dedicated to the purchase of general government assets and capital projects. So this seemed to fit in the description of the fund. And this will just stay in this fund. It won't be scheduled to be spent. It will just be
Okay, so
set aside.
if there's a need for another motor vehicle, it won't
It
be
would not
taken out of that.
come out of that 500,000 that we've set aside for the property, future
Okay.
possible property acquisition.
All right. The other fairly large transfer was $250,000 that was transferred over to the Criminal Justice Fund. And one of the things that I noticed over there is that on page 77, under personnel benefits, it's been increased $378,660, or 52.4% over last year. What happened?
And are you comparing actual to budget or projected to budget or budget to budget?
I guess I'm looking at projected.
Okay. And so that is a result of what we discussed before, that benefits are budgeted at the very top step, assuming that every employee in
I see.
PD
Okay.
is covering their entire family. And
Okay, I get
we
it.
have also had some injuries, some staff out in this year that would cause that, the projected amount to be a little lower as well.
Okay, and so where did most of that additional, because it had been 3.5 million for the last several years, where did that additional $250,000 go?
It is mostly in salary and benefits, but there were some, let me see, there was a $50,000 increase in jail services and $15,000 for animal services increase, and then several smaller increases throughout the budget that contributed to that.
Okay, and do you see this being an issue going forward in subsequent years, that there's going to be a need for that much of an increase year over year?
I don't I mean, we have built-in increases in the Milton Police Guild contract for wages, and so those will increase per the contract. And we also see, anywhere from 5 to 10% in benefit increases every year. So I do see that continuing to increase, hopefully not at the same level. And I know that jail services have increased, statewide costs, but hopefully we're kind of coming to a peak on those as well.
Okay. The other question I had was on page 65 under photo enforcement. I was just looking at the expenditures section and I was wondering what the professional services of $215,950 was. What is that?
That is the services to basically run the cameras. That is the amount that we would pay Nova Global to maintain the system, basically, to issue the software, issue the tickets, maintain the hardware, the cameras, the lights, kind of the administrative portion of the program.
It was my recollection that the contract that we have with them, that their fee is so their fee was taken before we got the money. Is that not true?
We pay, I believe it's $399. Like, let me pull up the. I actually have notes in here, but I think it's a little under $4,000 per camera per.
Oh, yeah, so that's right. It was a flat fee. So is that
Yeah.
what that is?
Yeah, and I can
Okay.
give you the exact, exact here. Sorry for the delay. Okay. That is 9. That number, that 215 represents 9 cameras at $3,999 per camera per month for 6 months.
Okay, all right. I remember that now. It's just that I saw, the last time Chief talked about this, it was suggested that we would be receiving $1.2 million, and I thought that that was going to be net. So now I'm,
And I believe that those were actually the numbers that were presented, that represented a full year. We don't anticipate being fully up and running until sometime around June. So the numbers here, both the revenue and the expenditures, represent 6 months worth
I
of
see,
activity.
okay. All right, and I have one more question for you. On page 54, back under the general fund summary, under the column, the 2025 budget, property taxes, I'm looking at that dollar amount and comparing it to the next agenda item. And am I to assume that this is the number? It almost matches the 2024 actual levy amount. Is that what that is? And you're waiting for this to pass in order to update that?
Yes and no. This is a conservative estimate, and it was based on, it's an increase of 1% over the 2024 projected amounts.
Okay.
So I do anticipate that property taxes will be larger. That 2024 projected amount did not take into account the $20 million, the $20 million of increased assessed value, or maybe it was 40 million. The assessed value increased significantly. I
Right,
don't believe
so
that
that'll
was.
be added in later.
Yes, that will be added in and become fully recognizable in 2025 taxes.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
it is a conservative estimate. If you all would like that increased, we can. But I personally feel more comfortable with just increasing it 1% over that projected amount.
Okay, I was just expecting what I'm seeing here
Yeah,
to be
and-
there, so.
And the dollars that we receive, we don't recognize that revenue until the cash is actually received. So that represents all of the levy that's going to be coming up here in the next agenda item. That represents all amounts basically levied to the taxpayers. What we see is cash received in hand, cash received by the county and passed along to us. So we will probably never, those two numbers will probably never equal because of delinquent taxes, various other adjustments, adjustments both up and down. But those two numbers will never exactly tie.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, feedback? Okay, so this will come back to our December 2nd meeting. Moving on to our next item this evening, it is on page 115 of your packet. It is the second read of ordinance 2102-24 for a 2024 budget amendment. I'm going to turn the floor over again to our interim director Robeck, and then following her review, I will need a motion to open up the floor for discussion.
The proposed ordinance provides adjustments to the 2024 budget that was adopted at the end of 2023. This is the third ordinance amending the budget and reflects changes that have occurred since adoption of the original budget. These adjustments are detailed in the accompanying exhibits and include a change to the wage scale to reclassify the Public Works Administrative Assistant position to a Public Works Administrative Assistant 2 position at a grade 16. This change reflects a title and compensation commensurate with the additional duties and responsibilities assumed by current staff. A description of the new position is attached as well. This ordinance was presented at the study session on November 12th for first reading, excuse me.
Would anyone like to make a motion? Councilmember Whalen?
We're discussing the 2024 budget ordinance. Move to adopt ordinance 210224, amending the 2024 budget as detailed in Exhibits A and B.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Hall to adopt ordinance 2102-24, amending the 2024 budget as detailed in Exhibits A and B. Councilmember Whalen, did you want to speak to your motion?
I think it's really clear in the explanation we were given.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Hall, did you want to speak to your second?
I appreciate that we update these, look at what the city needs, keeping current with wage scale and staff. So thank you.
Any other comments, questions, concerns, feedback from council? Okay, it is an action item. Are there any comments from the audience? Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Hall to adopt ordinance 2102-24, amending the 2024 budget as detailed in Exhibits A and B. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 6-0. Moving on to our next item this evening, it is on page 129 of your packet. It is for ordinance 2101-24 for the 2025 tax levy. I'm going to turn the floor over once again to Interim Director Robeck, and then following her review, I will need a motion to open up the floor.
The city must adopt and submit the tax levy ordinance by November 30th of each year. The attached ordinance pertains to the increase in the regular levy only, exclusive of additional revenue from new construction. Amounts for this ordinance are provided by Pierce County and are calculated as shown in the agenda bill. Additional revenue related to annexations and new construction is included in the preliminary budget and will be included in the levy certification as required.
Would anyone like to make a motion?
I will. Move to adopt ordinance 2101-24, establishing the regular tax levy for properties located in Pierce and King counties for the year of 2025.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Hall and seconded by Councilmember Whalen to adopt ordinance 2101-24, establishing the regular tax levy for properties located in Pierce and King counties for the year 2025. Councilmember Hall, did you want to speak to your motion?
No, other than this is just stuff we have to do that I don't like doing, but we have to follow the ordinance, so.
Councilmember Whalen, did you want to speak to your second?
Other than I concur with Francis Hall's discussion.
Okay. Are there any other comments, questions, concerns? Councilmember White?
Yeah, I'm sure by now most of you already know how strongly I feel about this issue. But I'm here tonight to offer a few additional thoughts and make one last attempt to persuade you that raising property taxes this year is simply ill-advised. Let's begin by considering the recent rate and fee increases that we, as the governing body, have already passed, each one affecting the very people we are elected to serve. On April 17th of last year, we raised water rates by 37%. On June 17th of this year, we increased electric rates by 4.6%. On May 20th, we raised stormwater rates an astounding 74%. At the same time, we imposed a new $416 impact fee, which will put upward pressure on property tax valuations for all property owners. And on February 20th, we increased our after-hours utility reconnection fee by 139%, bringing it to $450. This is a fee that hits hardest for our most vulnerable residents, those least able to afford it. These decisions have already increased the financial burden of our residents. With these recent hikes, many are already stretched thin. To add a property tax increase on top of these other rate increases would be an unnecessary and harmful burden. Now let's turn our attention to the proposed property tax increase and the broader financial picture. As it stands, our proposed 2025 budget already includes a surplus of over $4.1 million in the general fund, which represents 51% of the total general fund expenditures of $8.1 million. This surplus is significant and demonstrates that we have more than enough resources to cover our needs for next year. And that's not even including the $680,399 in our rainy day fund. When you factor that in, our total surplus rises to 59.4% of general fund expenditures, well above what's necessary to ensure our city's financial health. Here's the key point. Even before any additional revenue from property taxes, we're in an excellent financial position. This brings us to the proposal on the table. We're looking at an additional $125,334 in property tax revenue from new construction alone, on top of the $1.65 million, which will be carried over from last year. If we chose to forego the proposed 1% increase allowed by state law, that additional $125,334.36 would simply be added to the fund balance, increasing our surplus to 61% of total expenditures. Now let's break down what this property tax increase actually means. If we do move forward with this increase, we would gain an additional $17,753.34, a small fraction of our already massive surplus. This increase would push our surplus from 61% to 61.2%. It's a negligible difference, and I firmly believe that this small amount of additional revenue is not worth the impact it will have on our citizens. Our community is already dealing with rising utility costs and fees. Now is not the time to raise property taxes. We don't need the extra money. Our surplus is already more than sufficient, and raising taxes would only put additional strain on our residents. I simply cannot justify this increase. Our city does not need this money, and our citizens certainly do not deserve this additional burden. For all of these reasons, I cannot in good conscience support this proposed tax hike, and I strongly urge my colleagues to reconsider as well. Thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions, concerns, feedback? Councilmember Peretti?
Yes, thank you. I have considered this greatly through the process and understanding the figures that were just presented. I think there's a miscommunication of what a fund balance is versus what a electric fund is, what a water fund is, and how those are all actually separate companies in a budget. And you can't take those and group them all together and say, we have this massive overflow when the water company, the electrical company, the stormwater, whatever, are all separate entities in a fund balance situation, and they have to take care of themselves. So rates are raised in the water company side for the water company to survive. Rates are raised in the electrical side for the electrical company to survive. The general fund is the main issue that we're talking about here about fund balance. A 1% increase, which you have a choice of banking increases if you want to, but you're really just putting off the inevitable in the future because we can bank for multiple years and then we come back like other cities have done. And it's been a great consternation to the public because we say, oh, now we need the money, so we're actually going to do a 5% increase in property taxes. I think it's much prudent to actually do the 1% at a time as we move along because prices are going up. It costs more. I disagree full-heartedly that we do not have this surplus amount of money when you look at all the different funds that we have, and now they all have to account to themselves and not a total picture of a budget. So I will be promoting this and voting yes on it for sure.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, feedback, clarification? Councilmember White?
I'll just respond to that by saying that I only used the fund balance in the general fund, not in any of the other funds.
Okay. This is an action item. Are there any comments from the audience? Jacqueline Whalen?
Jacqueline Whalen, Milton, Washington. In reading page 129 of the packet, I notice the numbers are described in the recommended action as Pierce and King County numbers, values. When I look at page 133, I see the paperwork from the Pierce County assessor in orange color says official Pierce County values under the heading official notification to Milton. Pierce County values only. My request is, could we please learn what the numbers are for King County, particularly given the extremely large development at Bridgepoint? Thank you.
Jackie Strader?
Jackie Strader, Milton, Washington. The only question I have about it is, I know in the general fund, the cameras, when they go online, is an influx of like $1 million if it goes according to plan for this year. And it seems like since the city chose not to, or council has chosen not to allocate it like other cities have done to actually pay for public safety, like sidewalks, traffic, all of that, and you're allowing it to go to the general fund, to forego $17,000 seems like a good statement to make, because you're getting this massive influx that you've chosen not to allocate to what the cameras were sold to us to offset. Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay. It has been moved by Councilmember Hall and seconded by Councilmember Whalen to adopt ordinance 2101-24, establishing the regular tax levy for properties located in Pierce and King County for the year 2025. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
No.
Carried 4-2. Moving on to our next item this evening, it is on page 135 of your packet. It is Resolution 24-978 for an emergency declaration for the Porterway Water Main Crossing. I will turn the floor over to Director Madden, and then following his review, I will need a motion.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. The item before you tonight addresses the significant water main break that the city incurred in September of this year. The city would like to move forward with design of this and then seek construction funding in 2025. There are multiple sources to do that, but first we need to design it. This resolution is required to declare an emergency and allow the requirements of awarding and contracting for professional services be waived in order to facilitate design engineering for a new 12-inch water main to continue delivery of water service. G&O is the city's on-call engineer firm. They also were directly involved in our prior crossing project, which crossed at Birch Street. I believe this is a logical position to hold in this critical infrastructure project, and I feel that GNO could meet the city's requirements. Recommended action is moved to approve Resolution 24-1978, declaring the existing of an emergency relating to a water main break on the 6-inch steel water main crossing under Interstate I-5 at Porter Way.
Councilmember Hall?
Move to approve Resolution 24-1978, declaring the existence of an emergency relating to a water main break on the 6-inch steel water main crossing under Interstate 5, I-5 at Porter Way.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Hall and seconded by Councilmember Strader to approve Resolution 24-1978, declaring the existence of an emergency relating to a water main break on the 6-inch steel water main crossing under Interstate 5, I-5 at Porter Way. Councilmember Hall, did you want to speak to your motion?
It's pretty clear the city of Milton needs water, and we need to get this repaired as soon as possible. We have had some issues with some water being cloudy. So let's get this taken care of.
Councilmember Strader, did you want to speak to your second?
Yes, this is pretty self-evident. We have to have this done. My only question is, what caused the break?
There was no direct correlation between an event that actually caused the break. It was just more routine use and age of the facility or the infrastructure.
So basically, the pipe was old and
Correct.
gave out? Okay. I was wondering if it had anything to do with the construction that's going on there. So something had happened during that. So anyways, no, thank you. That answer.
Any other questions? Councilmember White?
Yeah, so when this broke, was it capped off? How was it repaired?
Yes, it was isolated by internal staff, and then we worked with a general contractor to assist the city in capping it.
Okay, so is there a backup water main that goes over the freeway? Or I'm assuming that the Milton residents west of I-5 are still getting water?
They are.
Okay.
Yes, there's a backup, but we have one line currently crossing I-5, and that line is at Birch Street. We also have an intertie with Lake Haven Water District, which allows us to meet fire flow in the event of a significant water usage.
Okay, how does one relay a pipe under the freeway?
Hydraulic boring is the answer. So you bore a line underneath, approximately 60 feet. We'll get into the depth during engineering, but it requires a significant amount of space. The city is fortunate that at the break location, which is north of Porter, east of I-5, we have an area to stage there, and we have a willing neighbor with Cannon Construction that will allow us to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. So that's obviously following the same line. So they're just having to bore a larger space, and they have room to do that from 6 to 12?
There are ways to expand a pipe if they're HP, the high-density polyurethane, but with it being a steel pipe, that is not an option, so we would do a parallel run when we bore.
Okay. That's amazing.
It is
That's
amazing.
kind of cool.
Yes.
So they hydraulically drill underneath the freeway?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, I can envision that, but, okay. Thank you. And I'm glad you're going from 6 to 12.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you, Mayor. And it's just more of an information. During this process, when it would be done, what's the impact of the general public in the area? It appears to be out of the way. But is it, are we looking at an impact again on traffic or water flow or anything?
No, I believe that we'll be able to do this work outside of the right-of-way, so there would not be a traffic impact. We would also isolate this system, flush it, and so there would not be a turbidity impact to area residents using that area of the water system.
And any impact with our standby providers,
With the what? Sorry.
standby water providers, like Lake Haven?
Only that our dependency upon them would lessen, but we would still have an intertie, which the city continuously invests in, that would allow us to address any type of emergency situation that would unfold.
It's kind of what I was trying to remember, and I think I remembered it well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, this is an action item. Are there any comments from the audience? Jacqueline Whalen?
Jacqueline Whalen, Milton, Washington. Thank you for bringing this forward and working to up-level, upgrade, strengthen, fortify our water utility. This points to the cause here, shows us that we have a lot of work to do, and I'm sure I'm not surprising any of you, but so glad to see this happening. Sorry it had to come as an emergency status, but it points to the need to really be proactive on things to a much higher degree. Second point on this is related to your agenda item 7E, and because you do a motion before you have a discussion, I just want to add the point that it might be wise to insert in the motion for 7E, contract with Gray and Osborne for the design of the I-5 water main crossing, just for clarity. Thank you for considering that.
Any other comments from the audience? Okay. Any other comments from council? All right. It has been moved by Councilmember Hall and seconded by Councilmember Strader to approve Resolution 24-1978, declaring the existence of an emergency relating to a water main break on the 6-inch steel water main crossing under Interstate 5, I-5 at Porter Way. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 6-0. Council, moving on to our last item this evening. It is on page 141 of your packet. It is a contract with Gray and Osborne for the I-5 water main crossing. I will turn the floor back over to Director Madden, and then following his review, I will need a motion to open up the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. This item is a continuation of 7D. We've discussed what this project would allow the city to do moving forward from a design standpoint. Just speaking to the citizen's comment, which I fully agree with, most of the time when we do a design-only contract, this contract, due to its time sensitivity, we did wrap in construction supervision, and it would, I believe, benefit the city to have a subject matter expert, absolutely the design professional, help fulfill and implement the construction of this project. And so construction oversight is wrapped into this $294,000 contract. Resolution 24-1978 is on the approval tonight for an emergency contract which would allow us to meet the need. And it is a HDPE pipe, which is high-density polyethylene.
Councilmember Peretti?
I move to authorize the mayor to execute the professional services contract with Gray and Osborne for the I-5 water main crossing for an amount not to exceed $294,460.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Peretti and seconded by Councilmember Strader to authorize the mayor to execute the professional services contract with Gray and Osborne for the I-5 water main crossing for an amount not to exceed $294,460. Councilmember Peretti, did you want to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I think everything's been answered through our previous discussion.
Okay. Councilmember Strader, did you want to speak to your second?
again, this is a no-brainer. Has to be done. So I believe that they will handle the job fully.
Any other questions, comments, concerns from council? All right, it is an action item. Are there any comments from the audience? Okay. It's been moved by Councilmember Peretti and seconded by Councilmember Strader to authorize the mayor to execute the professional services contract with Gray and Osborne for the I-5 water main crossing for an amount not to exceed $294,460. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carried 6-0. Next on the agenda is council reports, and we will start with Councilmember Whalen this evening.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I actually have a question of Director Madden. What I called you about on Oak Street, that was all taken care of? Was it an issue or?
Our team responded, and it was, there was a leak. It looked like it was on the domestic side rather than on the city-owned side, but I haven't heard conclusive feedback whether which side it was on, but our team did respond. I appreciate the call.
Well, I appreciate a resident who saw this or saw what was happening. I didn't know the scale of it, but I appreciate the quick response of what went on there. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Councilmember Hall?
Saturday or Friday night, I was walking on the trail between Kent and Porter Way, and there was a dryer and a torn apart shed on the trail. Somebody, I don't think, could have carried that in. Our barricades are no longer locked with a padlock. And that also caused that car to be on the trail up above here a couple of weeks ago. Those used to be padlocked, and emergency vehicles and police have keys for those. So I suggest we get those locked up, because if they're gonna start dumping, it costs the city money. Thank you for the city. Come Monday, I walk the trail and they're gone. We have a great staff, but we shouldn't have to do that. If we've got those locked up, at least we've got a little bit of barricade sitting there for big items anyway. So thank you.
Councilmember Strader?
Yes, I was contacted by a citizen up on 15th Avenue, and there was an altercation with a truck driver driving a tractor truck and trailer down 15th. Apparently, he makes deliveries to Dave's, and the driver actually got out of his truck and confronted the father who was waiting with his children at the school bus. Apparently made a gesture like, "What are you doing on the street like this?" The driver stopped in the middle of the road, got out of his truck, and then you can't hear what was said, but obviously that's a problem. So I talked with the administrative assistant, Nils Luckman, and he said he tried to contact the company and have a discussion and say, we won't tolerate that kind of behavior. So he still hasn't had a call back from the general manager. But I was looking at the ordinance, our city ordinance for truck routes, and this is part of the problem is the way it's written. It doesn't specify that the driver can't do what he's doing. And we don't want tractor trucks running down on our residential streets. So I would recommend that we look at an ordinance like they do in Sumner, where it specifies that you are not allowed to leave the closest location to where you're making deliveries. Of course, you got to make deliveries, and of course, occasionally you're going to have maybe a cement truck or other heavier vehicles going down the road, but that's for local deliveries. But it's just in our language, we don't have something that will cover this instance. So I would like to make a recommendation that that's looked into.
Okay, we can look into it.
One other thing, apparently there's a big storm coming. Was wondering, are we up to snuff on crews?
We are,
Okay,
yes. We discussed it today.
yeah, so
Yes,
I
thank you.
recommend everybody batten down their hatches.
Councilmember Peretti?
Nothing at this time.
Councilmember White?
Nothing for me.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Just that last Monday I went to the Veterans Day ceremony, and that was very nice. Councilmember Whalen was there. Oh, that's right, you were there too. Sorry. But I always enjoy going to those ceremonies, and it gives me a chance to go over we have a brick over on the wall for my dad, so it always gives me an opportunity to go over there. And I just like remembering people that have served. It kind of centers you and gets you back to that there are more important things in life than, your just everyday things that you have to deal with, that there are people out there that actually, came before us and gave their lives so we can, for the rights that we have and the life that we have to live. And I guess it's my way of saying thank you.
Thank you. Director Madden?
No comments?
Interim Director Robeck?
Just that we had a new employee start in the finance department last week. Her name's Nicole Chapman, and we're excited to have her.
Assistant Chief Champagne? You have anything this evening?
So the police department's still down 2 injured officers, but we have 2 starting, one on the 21st and one on the 4th. And I wanted to speak just real quick on the holiday season coming up, because I'm seeing some property crime going on down Meridian. And typically this time of year, we can see like an increase in package thefts, mail thefts, prowls, burglaries, robberies because of the holiday season. So I'm just asking everybody to be extra vigilant on that. And also, one thing people don't think about is depression during the holiday season, is we'll start getting a lot of crisis calls because people are alone. So just remind everybody to reach out to their loved ones and be aware of that. That's all.
And then I just have a reminder that we are closed next Wednesday and Thursday here at City Hall in observance for Thanksgiving and Native American Heritage Day. So don't come visit because no one will be here. But we're on call, of course, for emergencies. So is there anything else this evening before we adjourn? Okay. So seeing that all items have been concluded, I will